Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to Zooty Pickups. In today's video, we will be talking about the Nike Zoom Vaporfly 4%. So those of you guys that have been watching my channel know that I'm a huge fan of the Zoomfly family of shoes. I pretty much own like 3 other pairs at this point. This is going to be my 4th pair, and I've always been looking for the 4%. So I was super lucky. I was able to grab a pair of the OG colorway 4% on a restock for a little under retail. So I knew it was meant to be, and here it is. I'm super stoked I have a pair. So a little bit about the shoe. This shoe came out as part of the Nike Breaking 2 project. Essentially what that was it was Nike's attempt to break the 2-hour barrier for a marathon. It's never been done before. They came in really close. I think at the end it was like 2 hours and like 26 seconds or something like that. It's super close. But you know, the entire process involved optimizing everything from like the runner's nutrition, like the environmental variables, like the wind drag, all that kind of stuff. And obviously one of the biggest variables when it comes to running is shoes. So this is the shoe that Nike cooked up for that project. And as the name implies, 4%, this shoe apparently is supposed to make your running economy 4% better. This specific shoe is not the shoe that they used for the Breaking 2 race. Each individual runner had a personalized version of the Vaporfly Elites, which is kind of like a 1-tier higher version of this shoe. But essentially the midsole technology is identical on the shoe that was used in the race and on this shoe as well. So let's talk about that midsole technology. So the material that Nike uses on the midsole of this shoe is called Zoom X, and it is a brand new proprietary Nike cushioning technology. No other Nike shoe has it, and this is the only shoe available to consumers that currently has the Zoom X foam. The only other shoe that has it is the Vaporfly Elites, and that shoe is not available to purchase to your everyday common consumer. They're only available to Nike athletes, and they are custom made for each athlete's foot. So that being said, how does Zoom X feel? It's very difficult to describe in words, but if I were to summarize it, I would have to say it's kind of like a mix in between Adidas Boost and Nike Zoom Air. So hear me out. This is extremely bouncy. The foam is very responsive, unlike anything I've ever worn before. However, it's soft and cushy at the same time. Adidas Boost is a very soft and cushy cushioning technology. However, you know, it feels like a cloud and your foot kind of sinks into it, which is not ideal, I think, for running because you want that responsive energy return. This shoe, on the other hand, it has that softness of Adidas Boost where your foot kind of sinks in, but then when you're taken off, it'll bounce right back and it will propel your foot forward, like quite literally. On top of that, they also have that carbon fiber plate right down the midsole here that acts like a spring plate every time you take a stride. So pretty much every one of your steps is essentially a little bit spring loaded, and you can definitely feel that plate right here. I'm trying to bend the shoe here. It won't bend because of the rigid carbon fiber plate that goes right down the midsole right here. On top of that, the Zoom X foam is extremely light. This makes the shoe very light. When I first got the package for these shoes, like when the FedEx man delivered it, like I literally thought, is there like actually a pair of shoes in here, because it's super light. So if I actually flick the foam, you can actually hear how light it sounds versus the Lunarlon foam, which is a lot denser foam. It sounds denser and heavier. So here. So that being said, the innovations don't just stop at the midfoot, they continue to the upper material as well. So the upper is what Nike calls a engineered mesh upper. It is not Flyknit, but a mesh upper. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, I thought Flyknit is Nike's most advanced upper material. Well, that might be, but it's definitely not Nike's lightest upper material. And when they're building the shoe, I think they wanted to do like the lightest possible, most minimal shoe ever. So they opted to go with this mesh upper. The problem with the mesh upper is that usually mesh doesn't ventilate as well and it's not as stretchy. However, they strategically put striations all throughout this upper to increase with the ventilation and the flexibility. And I can report that wearing this shoe, it feels pretty much as comfortable as any Flyknit shoe. Also, it ventilates extremely well, so when I was running in it, I had zero issues with my foot overheating. So this mesh upper does a really good job. Also, one thing to point out is that there is another material on the upper, and it's this kind of like felty material right here. And they pretty much backed strategic location on the shoe with this felty material. You can see this heel area is all padded. So there's a little bit of padding right here to prevent your heel from popping out. So as you can see here on the inside, they've folded the shoe in on itself to create these little lace loop areas. And the inside of this area is also back with that felty suede material. So that's kind of like the concept of this shoe, like I mentioned earlier, is super minimalist. It doesn't have any fly wire, anything like that. The upper just kind of folds in on itself to create that lace cage area around your midfoot to keep your foot locked down. Another thing I guess that I thought was interesting to point out was that the upper paneling is pretty much identical to that of the Zoomfly SP. And the reason for that is the Zoomfly SP was actually one of the prototype uppers for this shoe. I think they were experimenting with different materials. They tried this stretch weave material. It was like plasticky, not very stretchy, and did not ventilate well, so obviously it didn't make it to the final cut. However, I think they thought it looked really cool, so they're like, oh, we should throw this on like a Lunar Lawn midsole and sell it as a separate shoe. And I think that's why the Zoomfly SP was born. So obviously, you know, the material design evolved past the stretch weave and eventually ended up with this engineered mesh. However, you can see that the paneling structure is pretty much identical to the Zoomfly SP. So you can see that it has the same asymmetrical tongue here. You got the same kind of like seam right here on the medial side. And the locations of the swooshes are all the same too. You got the big swoosh on the lateral side and you got the mini swoosh on the medial side. Also, another thing to note is that they did sprinkle some cool design elements into this shoe to not make it just like a super boring running shoe. On the inside of the tongue, you can see right here, it says 4%, and there's a little like running track symbol, and it also says engineered to the exact specifications of world-class runners. You can also see an extension of that here on the midsole. On the medial side, it says 4% fast, also engineered to the exact specifications of world-class runners, and it also says making runners faster. A final bit of design detail is on the heel, you get these little orange stripes. On the left side, it says racing with a Nike swoosh. On the right side, you got these empty LCD numbers to go in line with the whole concept of, you know, beating the clock and racing against the 2 hour. So I thought that was a really cool design touch. So all that being said, I guess we should talk about the important stuff. How do these run? Before I talk about that though, let me just kind of preface this with the fact that I am no professional runner by any means. I'm just like a total hobbyist runner. I rarely run any more than like 3 miles at a time. So I'm just like a total casual runner. But that being said, I mean, I've been running for a long time and running is like my primary form of exercise. So I've been through a bunch of running shoes and I know what I like and I know what I don't like. So let's talk about the performance of these shoes. How well do these shoes run? And do they make you faster? Unfortunately, I think for like 98% of the people out there, including me, these shoes will not make you faster. I think like that 4% running economy improvement like really makes a difference if everything else in your system is maxed out already. All the other variables are maxed out. And this is the only performance gain you can get. But for most people, you know, like we're not at that level of athleticism, so it doesn't really matter. Honestly, for me, like my record would not change if I ran in these or if I ran in some like Air Maxes or something like that. Like I'd pretty much like run the same minute mile. That being said, this shoe does offer a lot of benefits. The Zoom X midsole is super bouncy and super responsive, and that carbon plate just like propels you every time you take a step. So every time I take a stride, it feels like the ground is like literally like pushing me up and launching me forward, and it really makes me feel light-footed when I run in these shoes. And it might be a mental thing, but like, and I do feel like I'm a little less tired when I run in these. I usually run the same course every time I run, so I know how I should be feeling at certain points in the course. With these shoes, I can say that, like, you know, at like a point when I'm supposed to be feeling a little tired, like I felt a little less tired. And I think a lot of people say that it's mental, but you know, honestly, even if it's mental, that's like a win for me, because running is such a mental sport anyway to begin with. So if it gives me that little mental edge, I'll take it. However, that being said, this shoe is not without its faults. My biggest problem with the shoe is how high on the midsole that you're sitting. If you're making a lot of turns, if you're running in an urban environment, you need to make a lot of like 90-degree sharp turns, this shoe might not be the best, because you know you're sitting so high on the shoe. My ankles felt a little vulnerable there, just making those sharp turns. All my other shoes, I'm a lot lower to the ground, so I think that would have been a little better. Another problem I had with this shoe is the fact that it's not a very durable shoe. You can see the midsole right here, the Zoom X is exposed right in the middle of your foot, and this is not a very durable material. I don't know, I give this shoe maybe like 100 miles before it's toast, and for a shoe at this price point, that's not a lot of miles. Another issue I had was with the lack of support or structure. I am a pretty heavy overpronator, and when I overpronate, I need some sort of stability support right here on the medial side to prevent me from doing that. But as you can see, this shoe is a very neutral shoe that doesn't have any built-in overpronation support. So if you're a overpronator like me and running in these shoes, you're gonna have to consciously be aware of your gait and try to not overpronate. But I mean, I've actually heard that's like what you're supposed to do anyway. It's not good to rely on these like support systems, but you know, it's just something that you should be aware of. However, those shortcomings aside, I think Nike has made one of the best running shoes I've ever ran in. It's such a joy to run in, and each stride I really just like feel that Zoom X cushion, and it's just really difficult to describe in words, and it brings a lot of fun back into running. So how does this shoe stack up in a casual wear type environment? Well, it stacks up really well, mostly because of this super comfortable midsole. Like I said earlier, this midsole is super cushy and super comfortable. It has that cushiness of Boost, making it very ideal for casual wear. It also has that responsiveness, so you're gonna be kind of like bouncing around your school or office or whatever, but it's extremely comfortable. And the upper material, because it is not that stretch weave like on the Nike Zoomfly SPs, they fit a little roomier. So for the Nike Zoomfly SPs, those were a little small and people had to size up. For this shoe, you could be true to size and it'll fit fine. The upper material is also a little stretchier as well, so it's a little more comfortable. So overall, in terms of casual comfort, this shoe ranks way higher than the Zoomfly SPs. But all in all, I think for the high price tag of $250, it is kind of hard to justify the purchase of this shoe as a strictly casual shoe. But as a shoe to run in and wear casually, I think it's worth the purchase. Also, the fact that it's the OG colorway of a new model with the new cushioning technology and part of the whole Breaking 2 project, making it a little bit historically significant, I knew I myself could not pass it up. And it's also a great running shoe, so it's gotten me out the door running several times already. So I hope that video answered some of the questions that you guys had about this shoe. I know I had a bunch of questions before I got it. It's definitely not a small amount of money to drop on a running shoe, and I know I definitely wanted to do my research before getting myself a pair. So I'm gonna throw these on foot so you guys can see what they look like. And once again, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.
the start.